ring my gavel someday. I'm gonna go through this. I know you've been told 10 minutes. I'm gonna ask if, don't repeat. Try and keep it as short as you can. So we're gonna start with Leslie Nulty. Leslie's here, great.
And you have a packet in your folder for Leslie?
And we have a packet in our folder from Leslie. Okay. Put that packet back in that folder.
So I did submit written testimony. I will try to be brief. I hope there will be some time for a couple of questions.
Yep.
I'm going to try to hit the highlights as best I can in order to respect the exhausting work you guys are involved in. The first thing I want to say is, first by way of information, for those who have not got the written testimony, I now have about 20 years experience in the telecom industry, 14 years in fiber to the home development in Vermont. I am now the CFO and part owner of a new startup fiber to the home initiative, building into rural northwestern Vermont into unserved areas. I was one of the initial developers of CVFiber. You've already had testimony from them. So I'm very familiar with the challenges of developing a municipal approach to fiber development, broadband development. And I know that you've just been wrangling with revenue issues for the state. And so I have one important message for you. If you want the state of Vermont to have a sustainable, stable revenue stream for managing state government, you've got to have a stable, sustainable economy. And we will not have that in the state of Vermont without serious broadband development. The fact of the matter is there have been many, many missteps in this area in Vermont. We can do better than we have done. Outside of Vermont, throughout the country, we have enormous numbers, hundreds if not thousands, of rural fiber to the home initiatives. And we are lagging in Vermont.
Okay. I think we know that.
We agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I think our
not gonna
question
find-
is,
Yeah,
does,
no, we appreciate it.
So
Yeah.
the first thing I want to say is you've got to pass this legislation. This legislation has to move. I think there are many, many ways outlined in my testimony that I would like to see this legislation improved. There are many elements in this legislation that I think are ill-advised. I would rather see the legislation passed as is than have my recommendations adopted, if that is going to impede movement of this legislation. So I want you to act with urgency. I do note that we have two of my senators, I live in Jericho, from Chittenden County, who may not fully appreciate just how dire the circumstance is. Because you can assume in Chittenden County, or if you come from a central town, that everything is fine. It is not. There are many, 13% we have found, both in CVFiber and our current initiative, 13% of households in Vermont have businesses in the home. And they cannot grow their businesses without robust connectivity. Now, I would like to address some of the key elements that I think could use substantial improvement. The first thing I brought to your attention was the imbalance in the distribution of monies to the Department of Public Service for the connectivity grant initiatives. The fact that there is $700,000 for feasibility studies and only $200,000 for actual implementation. The actual implementation grants used to be funded at a level of $500,000. I think these should be reversed. And just to tell you about the slippery slope of feasibility studies, when we started CVFiber in 2007, and we went to the state of Vermont for help, we were told, oh, your business plan is junk. Fiber to the home will never work in rural Vermont. We got no help from the state of Vermont, CVFiber, until citizens in some of the towns actually had to organize a protest when the governor came to visit to say, why aren't you supporting CVFiber? And the same goes for many, many other initiatives outside of what the incumbents are doing. That was my first big suggestion for improving this legislation. There's another very tricky part, and that has to do with served versus unserved areas. Because eligibility for state money always goes to unserved areas. How those are identified and defined is a problematic issue. And at the end of my testimony, I have suggested several ways in which the identification of unserved areas for the purposes of distributing state money could be improved. I won't belabor them here, you have them in writing. I hope you can take a good look at that.
Madam Chair, I just have a question. Did you bring, Leslie, did you bring this to the attention of the House Committee
I did,
in terms of reversing the allocation of
I
funds?
did,
Okay.
and they did not do it.
Okay, I'll follow up. Thank
And
you.
that distressed me a great deal.
Okay.
I was delighted, however, as I said, that they took my recommendation with respect to feasibility studies to put in language that said any feasibility study must result in an actionable business plan. Because you'll have
Sure.
$60,000 consultants flying around producing work that can't be used.
Okay.
Finally, please pass this VITA broadband expansion loan program. That program would enable our company to grow so much more rapidly, reach so many more people quickly, become eligible for conventional bank financing, which is our preference anyway. The other part of this thing that bothers me a bit is the many, many burdens being placed on the staff of the Department of Public Service. You're adding, the legislation adds one new person. That person could not possibly handle all the mandates included just in this legislation, let alone everything else that they're already doing. I am particularly concerned also about the carve-outs for electric utilities. And what I bring to your attention is that there are electric utilities, particularly rural electric cooperatives, all over the country, building broadband. What are they building? Fiber to the home with new technology. They do not use the electrical space for good reason, because it is not usable. It is high cost to re-engineer, redesign, and then you need high cost, highly skilled people to maintain it if you're in the electrical space. Why we are funding studies for something we know already doesn't work and has been rejected by the industry is beyond me. I don't understand why state money should be doing that. I think I've hit on the really big, toll attachments, very important. I support the language in this bill. It needs to be passed. It is a major impediment to broadband development in the state. There are numerous ways it needs to be improved. We will participate in the PUC proceeding, because I don't think you can solve it all with legislation, but what is in this legislation should be supported and should be passed. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, questions from the committee? Senator Sarah?
Are you sure the VITA provisions don't prioritize regions that have, or counties or towns that don't have broadband already over your program?
No, I don't, because this is a special fund, a special designation for new startups,
Right.
and it has that same served, unserved test that all state monies have.
But I thought you said you really support the Vita thing because you can access, your existing program can access the program.
We hope to be able to, I can't say for sure, I
Yeah, and I'm
mean,
just asking, I haven't looked at the language recently, but I thought they were talking about when they brought it in, they said this would allow for new programs like CVFiber, not expansion of your program.
I don't know that.
I'm sorry, we're a startup, we connected
You're a
our first
startup.
customer in September 2017.
Right.
We're growing like this,
Okay.
we need money.
Yeah.
I
I think
I think
need
he's
affordable
asking,
money.
This was
that's
so
asking,
you
does
could
the
go
language
out-
prohibit that?
Yeah,
So we
this-
have to go and look at the language.
Yeah, this was so, to go for a revenue bond, you have to demonstrate a stream of
No,
revenue.
no, I'm not talking about the revenue bond.
No, but I think that was part of it, for the new startups, they have to have income coming in before they can access any other form. And this loan would allow you to develop a customer base so you have a revenue stream, which other financing
Well, let
requires.
me explain, we have a revenue stream, our new company,
Right,
Mansfield Community Fiber, has a revenue stream.
okay, this was in general,
It's a small revenue stream.
right.
We are not yet ready, eligible for conventional bank financing.
Right.
That's
This
why
would, this would
be
allow
useful.
you to develop your revenue stream to the point
Yes.
where you would be eligible for whatever other
Right.
kind of financing you want to go
Correct.
to. Okay. Any other questions? Senator McDonald?
Is the we refer to high-speed internet and broadband, is the 25.3, is that a?
Well, it's certainly
Is that
an
a
improvement
realistic-
over what we've got now. I mean,
Well, that's not a high
25.3.
bar.
No, 25.3 will be shortly obsolete. And this is a good point that you lead me to, Senator. We often discount the importance of upload. 3 megabits per second upload speed is trivial and is not supportive of the kind of applications that Vermont needs, that rural Vermont needs. Right now, the latest FCC funding program is giving additional points for anyone who can deliver 100 symmetrical. Only fiber to the home will deliver a symmetrical service. So we now offer 3 tiers, 25, 50, 100. It's symmetrical and it's not up to. When we connect a customer, we prove with a speed test at their premises, whether if they're not getting 25 or 50 or 100, whatever they subscribe for, we do whatever we need to do to make sure that that is correct. When you subscribe to any of the other services, they will not guarantee what speed you're going to get. DSL varies from the distance to the nearest port, to the number of ports provisioned, to how many lines are on that port, et cetera, et cetera. That's why none of the incumbent companies will other than CVFiber or VTEL's fiber to the home, none of them will guarantee the speed.
So that's what you get when the stars are aligned and it's not raining.
Well, if you're in the right place at the right time.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I agree, but this
But
is
it's
an
a, so
improvement.
it's a false
All I'm saying
number.
is I wouldn't want to see the legislation held up over dispute, over the 25.3. If you can get the House to accept 100 to 100 or 50 to 50 or whatever it is, that would be great with us.
They always want 150 to 150.
Okay. Okay, Senator Pearson.
Just a comment.
Then Senator Brock.
Thank you, and I live in the world of Burlington Telecom, which I'm sure you have more than a little to do with. And the upload speed, just for folks, a tiny illustration. I have a friend who does video editing. His office is on Church Street. He has Comcast on Church Street. He literally would spend 12 hours uploading his finished product, and so he would put it onto his iPad, take it home, and upload it in 15 minutes. And you know, he could not have functioned using his Comcast connection to upload his finished product. I just wanted to comment, we're not stalling on this. This is a very standard legislative pace as we finish our work over the next 3 weeks. I don't see
We're not
any
stalling.
reason to think we will not pass
That's
this.
great.
So please
All
understand that the House took 2 months or 3 months to work on this. We will do our work, and there is no reason to sound.
I'm delighted. I just want to say I had a conversation with someone at the Department of Public Service, and they were worried. So,
People worry, but in this
I
case,
worry.
They deserve to be worried.
But
This
not
is
about
the
that.
best initiative, this is the best initiative I have seen from the legislature since I have been in Vermont,
and
20 years.
your comment about using the electric utilities is, we don't need to study it, we don't need to evaluate it, we should get them moving. Is that?
No, it's
No.
not feasible.
That-
They
No,
can't
yeah,
spend
I'm
time
saying
studying. The
it's
industry
already been
says.
rejected by the industry.
So if you could send us
Okay.
some data, some footnotes, like, we need to get on this now, because that's not what we've been hearing, so we need evidence on the other side, saying
Okay.
that we need to move on.
I will
Yeah.
find rural
That would
electric
be great.
cooperatives that are building fiber to the home and
Great.
Senator
But that follows on to the question that I intended to ask in terms of what's meant by electric utility infrastructure. When you take fiber to the home, do you ever use the electric company's poles and do pole attachments to facilitate that?
yes, but that's not
And-
what is, of course, I mean,
Yeah,
but that's
of course.
already there. You
Right.
don't need legislation for that.
Correct. So if what you are saying basically is that the transmission lines and other internal things that an electric company uses, as opposed to the poles that go directly to the home, that is what the industry has discounted. And
Correct.
as Senator Pearson was asking, if you could provide us with some references to look at,
I will-
that would
I
help
will
us
do that one.
understand that.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it may be
Yeah.
that in terms of what's defined here has just been imperfectly drafted, as opposed to,
But we already have regulation granting access to electric utility poles, so no
Okay,
legislation.
no, I think we're just looking for you, your testimony has been that the industry has rejected. I think what we're looking for is some data or just a
Yes.
reference that shows that the
and
industry has
particularly what the
rejected.
industry has rejected.
Right.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well,
It's not-
let me rephrase it. When, the industry I'm speaking about is the telecom industry.
Yeah.
Yes,
And what I'm saying is that where you see electric utilities going into telecom, they are not using their existing electrical transmission system to build a broadband network. They're building a de novo fiber to the home.
right. Okay.
So I can give you
Yeah, that's-
websites and.
So what you're saying in terms of infrastructure, is we're talking about using the electric utility infrastructure. The poles are part of that infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
The personnel,
That is
the
the
buckets.
clarity of what the industry has discounted. They discounted using transmission lines and other parts of the electric utility
Right.
system that are designed to transmit electricity for the system, but they are not discounting the infrastructure that delivers electricity to the home, because that's the pole.
Right.
Okay. There's also been
Okay.
some
And that's
talk
the
about
clarity that I think-
smart meters, and there is
Right.
fiber out there. Okay,
One step behind you.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
I appreciate your work.
next is
I
Emily
didn't mean to,
Peyton.
I just wanted to give you a sense of bar urgency.
Okay, in fairness to all the witnesses, I'm gonna ask us to keep it to 5 to 10 minutes. I'm trying to get through this, and I am going to have to step out momentarily.
You have everything that I want to say written. I
Okay,
have
that's
four-
great. Okay, then you
two-
can just
two-
summarize it in a
No,
couple
let me-
minutes.
May I?
Yeah.
I have 4 2-minute clips to show
Okay.
you.
There we go.
It is very germane to the health, and if you put only fiber to premises and replace broadband with fiber to premises in that bill, I'll be golden. So I'm gonna play this for you.
By people who are hired to do studies to find no effect. And that's
Okay, can you just tell us who this is for the record?
This is a scientist who is talking about doing studies for Motorola.
Okay.
Only up until we started generating data, these folks were very, very upset and began to talk about how are they going to handle this, what sort of spin can we put on this, what can we expect from this, and from that point on the relationship changed. What we saw was that Motorola began to exert more control over the work, telling us what to do, telling us how to write abstracts, what to say in the abstracts, and what to say in the paper.
This is about the safety of
How to
wireless.
do the work. No.
And the FCC has done no testing on this.
This is unacceptable. I have completed our study of DNA damage, and that's a big file.
So I want you to think about how many kids are in apartment houses around Vermont, before you see this next piece, next to smart meters.
My evaluation of my study, my knowledge of science at that point, and tried to urge me not to publish the study.
We were made aware of health complaints following installation of smart meters, and we wanted to verify this using our field work. So I measured the field of about 30 different people while they stood 1 foot in front of the smart meter, and in every single case, the human energy field was obliterated as they stood in front of the smart meter. So in our first slides, what we see is normal cells, and the structure of the cells is intact and sound. This is what we would expect from a normal sample. So after 2 minutes of exposure in front of the smart meter and about 1 foot away, we see a totally different story. In sample 1, you can see a lot of degradation in the cells. The cell walls have been broken, and you see changes in the cells, which are called mycoplasma, which shows a mutation in the cell. In the second sample, we see a different type of degradation to the cell membranes. You can see a corrugation here. This is called bottle cap formation, and it's known that this occurs due to oxidation or exposure to free radicals. So this third subject, when we did her sample, she had to be pulled away from the meter after 45 seconds because she complained about an increasingly severe headache. And here you see a phenomenon called glow, where the red blood cells are stacking up, which makes it very difficult for the blood to deliver oxygen to the tissues as they would be their normal function. Every single one of these is a degradation. Every single one of these shows a trauma in the blood cells. And they came from something in the order variables.
That's one. I have all these links there. I just need your eyes to see these. There's this popular thing that's saying that, let me show you this. This is important for you guys to see.
It's no longer a subject for debate when you look at PubMed and the peer-reviewed literature. These effects are seen in all life forms: plants, animals, insects, microbes. So 5 minutes is not a conversation about whether or not these biological effects exist. They clearly do.
There is scientifically evidence that is so strong that you can be certain that the standards used by the SCC to manage health effects are wrong.
We need to start measuring how much radiation are people being exposed to. Before we roll out 5G, there are 4 kinds of electromagnetic fields that we know are harmful to human health. So radio frequency radiation, magnetic fields, dirty electricity, and electric fields, okay? Our exposure, any given person, and all humans are affected by EMFs. What is our exposure? In a day, it's not one cell phone. It's cell phones, it's multiple wireless networks, it's smart meters, it's cell towers. It's this sandwich, and it all adds up.
The data we're going to look at are all published science testing results for public standards. At the bottom end of the radiation scale of what's called power density or signal strength is the minimum level at which cell phones will work, which was found to be 0.2 billionths of a microwatt per centimeter squared. Pine needles were found to age prematurely at 0.00027. At short-term exposures of 0.05, children aged 8 to 17 experienced headache
irritation, concentration difficulties, and behavioral problems. Point 1 is the Bell Biology or Building Biology Guideline for Extreme Concern.
Would you
1.0
kindly
raised sperm DNA
characterize the
fragmentation
concerns
and
you think the legislature ought to look into? I feel unqualified
Also,
to
1.0, the science shows the
comment
bodily effects
on this
headaches,
presentation.
dizziness,
I'm not asking for a comment, I want to shed light where you haven't been
Well,
looking.
indigestion.
I'm not seeing any light.
2.5, so altered calcium metabolism,
I
heart muscle
don't
cells.
disagree with this, I don't agree with it, I don't
Changes in
understand.
the hippocampus affecting brain memory and learning.
And
And
it's
6.0.
What
it's
I'm trying
certainly,
to tell you,
it is
what I'm
certainly
trying to tell you,
important.
on section, on page 24,
Power Institute,
line 6, you've got a statement in this bill that says that none of the foregoing shall impair the obligation to the contracts in contravention of the Constitution of the United States. Now, I'm not worried about the contract, I'm worried about our right to life and safety, and I just want to make sure.
This makes, then why don't you shut that off and tell us about the part that you might seek to have rewritten or.
Will you watch this later? Everybody needs to know this. I put the mark in there, it's all in there. You guys need to know this.
So you suggested that we look at page 24, line 96?
No, I have the links, and the way they start, you can take them, and I have a list of all kinds of websites where you can bone up on why it's really important the state get interested in the health problems around wireless. Now, on page 24, the language caught my eye. And the language caught my eye specifically because nobody, can I?
Page 24, line
6.
Six.
Page 24, line 6. Let's look at that. And throughout the bill, I'd say change it to fiber to the home. And I have a clip here that shows you, if you think that 5G isn't coming, then you need to watch this movie.
what we have.
I guess, yeah, you don't have time to hear from the
No,
people who really
that's,
care.
no,
I
we do
get it.
have, if I may, we do have time to hear from people that have come in to speak to us. And the fact that you have these in links and online gives us a lot more flexibility to look at them one at a time when we've finished listening to the live testimony that folks have to present to us.
Well,
So-
I think if you can honorably look at them, it's in all of our best interests. It's not just me.
If you have
Everybody.
the links, you have them, and they're
You
on
have the
They're in
links.
this package.
And
You
they're
have
in
them.
the packet, and then they're on the website, so you could just link to them.
And you can get right to the point, just
And
I
I-
took out the best
I
parts.
think we got the impression that on 24, line 6 is perhaps kind of
Yes,
a
here,
everybody in free, in the case something doesn't go in a healthy manner, is that?
well, I attached in an exhibit, I think it's exhibit 5 or something, all the lawsuits that are already being started by different cities. Now, one of the links you haven't seen here is the FCC commissioner saying and talking about the 5G rollout, because I don't think you understand.
I don't understand.
I don't, okay, can I tell you in a nutshell?
And this page provides
Okay,
So
let me,
to follow Sarah McDonald, where in the bill, I'm not understanding, I understand, I think, a little bit of your concern. I'm not understanding where it translates to the language we're looking at.
Okay.
So if we could just
Is
slow
that
down.
Okay.
sort of
If
immunity
You said
you-
page
concerns?
25.
okay, if you're talking about broadband, then you're including 5G. If you're talking about fiber to the home, you're good. So anywhere where you're including 5G and where the make-ready attachments is to make ready for microcells on these telephone poles, so we have essentially
Okay.
have mini cell phone towers on every single one of those poles, there is a problem.
Okay.
So, and there
Thank
is a
you.
problem, not just here, but other states, I have a whole, I just
Okay,
got a
that
bunch of
that was my
lists,
question,
okay?
I appreciate
So
that.
in this, you have a very ambiguous statement here on line 6, line 5. Provided that the foregoing shall not impair the obligation of any contract or contracts entered into by the authority in contravention of the Constitution of the United States. That sentence could be that you're entering into contracts that are in contract.
So let me
We
explain.
will give you our commitment that we will have couple lawyers come in and look
Yeah, but.
that, those.
But I'm not seeing that.
So that's, can I explain?
And also-
She's looking at the
Senator Mayor.
bill, she's looking at the bill that
22.
she prepared and submitted. It is not the same as passed by the House in our folders. So I don't know, the formatting is different, so the pages do not align. If you wanna see what she's referring to, you have to go to.
That's what it was available
See,
to me
so-
just 2 days ago.
Yeah, no, that's
I don't know
fine.
what to
I'm
change.
not complaining,
But-
just to explain,
Thank-
they don't.
But what
they
I'm
don't-
also
Thank you,
wanna point
Senator
out-
Bailey.
Yes.
What I also want to point out in this bill is that you have never defined VITA. You're using VITA and then you're using the word authority. There's nowhere in the definitions that you have said VITA is what you're referring to as the authority. And may I also respectfully point out that the authority with a capital A is not the appropriate way to talk about anybody but God.
Another drafting issue?
Yes, it is a
Technical
drafting
thing,
issue.
which
And I
is
made comments, okay, so if you get the reason why I acted like a total idiot, to give you guys a clue, that there are huge and enormous health problems with making a microcell make-ready attachment to every single telephone pole. So I think I made my point. You have tons of stuff there. Let somebody else go. And I don't, you know, there's a lot of
Thank you
people
both
here.
for making the point and for realizing that you made it, and it's time to move on to the next person. Thank you very much.
Well, you need to look at those clips,
Yep.
because there are, the FCC chairman there who's talking about putting in technology in plant waters, the Internet of Things.
Thank you.
There are huge search issues there.
Now I gotta struggle with the pronunciation here. Ishana?
Yes.
Yes.
And she can test your
Artra?
environment here.
How do you pronounce
Ishana,
Ishana?
yes, Ishana Artra. Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I'm a little unclear on how much time I have. I was planning for 15
Probably not as much
minutes.
as you hoped for, but do, go ahead.
Okay,
You
so.
have her testimony in your.
Yep, I got it.
Yes, okay, good. So, first of all, thank you so much, Chair Cummings, who I think is not in the room at the moment, and members of the committee for hearing my testimony today. I am Ishana Artra. I'm with EMF Safety for Vermont, and I'm an EMF testing professional. EMF stands for electromagnetic fields. I've lived in Vermont for 20 years, and I am here to testify on Bill, do I say H.513? H.513. Winston Churchill said one of my very favorite quotes. He said, "Healthy citizens are the greatest asset any country can have." And some things never change. That's why I'm here today. I'd like to begin by inviting the committee to consider, while I present some facts, the precautionary principle, which is applied in biotechnology and fields that deal with chemical pollutants or radiation exposure, food safety. And essentially the principle is this: if there is a threat that's uncertain, then some kind of action is mandatory. While we, EMF Safety for Vermont, and we have about 100, 150 people as well involved, we do strongly agree with the intent of Bill 513. I want to make that very clear, to bring broadband service to all Vermonters. But Section 19, and I'm sorry I left the one out in the title of my comment here, Section 19 is problematic from a public health perspective.
In the as passed by House.
Excuse me?
Is this in the as passed by House?
Yes, it is, yes. So why is it a problem? Well, if we look at the FCC's webpage for its one-touch make-ready acceleration plan, its wireless acceleration plan, they title their webpage, let's see here, they title it FCC facilitates wireless and infrastructure deployment of 5G. So on the FCC's website, they are making explicit that the FCC one-touch make-ready, and they call it a regime, the one-touch make-ready regime is in order to streamline the deployment of ubiquitous wireless, especially 5G. This means wireless everywhere, and from a public health perspective, this means no one could opt out in a public space. Section 19 directs the Public Utilities Commission to adopt one-touch make-ready policies and to change its rule 3.700 to, quote, further the state's interest in ubiquitous deployment of mobile telecommunications. That's on page 26. So this is especially troublesome to us, given the fact that the FCC, as you've heard before, has no safety studies for 5G. They disclosed that to Senator Blumenthal of Connecticut in video testimony. They have no safety studies for 5G.
Can I just interject?
Sure.
Let you know, in the way our bills come to us, when you see language that's not underlined,
Yeah.
which is the language you're referencing, for instance, that's current law. So what you're asking would be a change in current law. If we do nothing with this bill, that stands, that's the law. So just want you to understand, the way we would think of it is we're not making a change to that. So your complaint, as I'm understanding it, is with the current law.
Yes, this bill, would that, so it's Bill 513 would be the current law?
No,
Well, the current
Already
law
exists.
is-
So anything that's not underlined, so
Yeah.
the underlined is the new language that's been proposed by the House.
Okay,
This is already in statute.
okay, so then,
Ask a while.
yes, so section 19, what is the change in section 19?
Anything that's underlined.
You may have had the
So-
same version we
Yeah,
had.
right,
So it
that would be
does-
helpful.
If you want to look at this,
Sure,
that
thank you.
is section 19. Those
Okay,
are the things that are
excellent.
underlined.
We have issues. I can just tell by looking at it. Excellent, thank you very much, I appreciate that. So, okay, so, catch my breath a little bit here.
Thank you, Senator Brock. Senator Brock.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Class activity, Rick.
Yeah, we're team, yes, team finance here.
So one-touch make-ready policies for pole attachments, that's underlined, that would be a change.
That would be a change.
And
exactly.
that is what I was referencing with the FCC.
Okay.
That's their streamlining the deployment of 5G. And what's really interesting to us is they've titled their acceleration plan, Accelerating Wireless Broadband Deployment by Removing Barriers to Infrastructure Investment, Removing Barriers. Now, let's see.
Rashana, did you send us the link to that FCC website, or is that in your packet?
When I did my edits, I accidentally deleted it, but I wrote down the footnote here, and I can absolutely
Yeah, give it to me.
provide, I
That'd be
apologize
great.
for that, yeah, that was one of the most important footnotes too. So, the CTIA has been issuing comments to the Public Utility Commission, about changes to Rule 3.700. And in their communications, I'm gonna quote them, they talk about 5G. They say, quote, "The wireless industry is in the midst of deploying advanced wireless technologies, including 5G networks, and improvements to the Commission's pole attachment rules will promote these wireless deployments." I'd also like to add that this isn't a conversation I've heard anyone bring up, but a topic, but Vermont has exempt status. We are a certified state. We're certified to regulate our own pole attachments, which is a luxury that only 20 states in the United States have. And that acceleration plan, stated in it, is the fact that we're exempt. So I just wanted to pass that along, but it's a fine point I didn't know if you were aware of. We are not required to implement the one-touch make-ready plan, if I'm understanding that correctly.
So what we would,
So,
you're saying we're not preempted in that area, is that what you're saying?
Right.
Suggesting.
okay, I don't know what the preempt.
Well, we regulate our own rules, but we do. Because
We're not required to implement the federal requirement as an exemption. And do you know why the exemption exists?
We are a certified state, so I have.
What does that mean?
That means we can regulate our own pole attachments, set fees, conditions, and there's a third category. And I can send you I have the document that shows us on the list with the federal government as a certified state, and it even explains what that means.
It's probably because we regulate, right? Not
Yeah,
deregulate.
because I think we
So-
have that rule, yeah. Yeah, and that rule is what section 19 is proposing we change, so that we get into lockstep with the FCC's plan, which is based on no standards for 5G. And the standards that they do have are based in 1992 and 1989, 1986 and 1992 studies. That's it. They haven't updated them. So, let's see, moving on. I know that you have a copy of this, and I hope that you'll take a moment if you have a chance to really read through this. I'm just going to try to pull out some highlights. I'm just going to read this bullet list of why this is a problem. The rule changes that are proposed by Bill 513, H.513, would mean small cell antennas could be attached to poles everywhere throughout Vermont. Now, this is problematic in at least 5 ways. 5G is untested for public safety, as it uses an untested man-made form of pulsed radio wave radiation at frequencies far higher than any we've been exposed to thus far. It's not proven safe. Cellular antennas have been associated with cardiovascular, endocrine, nervous system, and neuropsychiatric suffering. A growing population is becoming symptomatic with increasing cumulative exposure to man-made radio wave radiation. That includes children and adults. And to achieve reliability, this is very interesting for Vermont, trees need to be cut for 5G's millimeter waves to have a clear line of sight. We have a quote in this comment from the chief engineer of Samsung stating very clearly that wet leaves, icy leaves, snow-laden leaves, and dense trees will block 5G millimeter waves, and that they would have to be cut. Or hacked, trimmed. So we have concerns in the areas of public safety, tree loss and damage, and decreased property values. If anyone assumes the FCC has our back, I want to offer 2 facts. The FCC has been shown to be a captured agency, and its exposure limits have not been updated since 1996.
Captured agencies.
Yeah, there's a revolving door of executives. So you have telecom executives going into the FCC executives. It's dizzying. Yes, and that's a mainstream knowledge now. Yeah. You're welcome. So what I'd like to show you as a visual aid is the FCC's 2013 reassessment that was ordered by the Government Office of Accountability. And this is their assessment that contains their rationale for the standards. And then we have the studies. And these are summaries of the studies. Make it upside down. Over 2,000 studies. They're international, they're independent, they're evidence-based, and they all show, when you add them all up together, harm from pulsed radio frequency radiation. The FCC made a very interesting statement that, again, nobody has talked about, and I couldn't believe it when I stumbled onto it, and you'll find it very interesting. I put a copy of it in your packet. Page 73. So this is in the FCC's own words. In 2013, they said, quote, "We recognize that a great deal of scientific research has been completed in recent years, and new research is currently underway, warranting a comprehensive examination of FCC limits and policies. Moreover, the ubiquity of device adoption, as well as advancements in technology and developments in the international standards warrant an inquiry to determine whether our general regulations and policies limiting human exposure to RF radiation are still appropriately drawn. End quote. So I'm going to offer that no changes have been made since this 2013 statement 6 years ago by the FCC, where it acknowledged that its limits were in need of an inquiry. And yet 5G is being promulgated by the FCC, encouraging us to deploy it ubiquitously. I'd also like to include Tom Wheeler, the former chairman of the FCC, his warning that he issued at a press conference about 5G. He said, quote, "Stay out of the way," end quote. Then he said, quote, "Turning innovators loose is far preferable to letting committees and regulators define the future. We won't wait for the standards," end quote. And indeed, they have not. We know now, based on independent, evidence-based, peer-reviewed, published international research that dates back to 1990, and before that, we have a bibliography of 3,700 associations of effects with radio frequency radiation made by the Naval Medical Research Command. And that's also in your packet. They've documented 100 effects from radio frequency radiation. They're widespread, they go throughout the body. They involve cardiovascular, endocrine, nervous system, and neuropsychiatric suffering. Cancer, diabetes, depression, anxiety, resistance to antibiotics, disorientation, tinnitus, just a few of the known symptoms. You may also, you'll see too, a picture in your packet of the plastic mannequin that the FCC uses to base its safety guidelines on. It's not a biological entity, and it's based on a body size and dimension that is about 3% of the population, not children. Again, it's not biological. So then we have the Bioinitiative report, which is biological, based on human beings and animals. I'll just see. I'd like to let you know about recent developments in the study of cancer. Again, this has become mainstream. It really hit the press this year when these findings were released. Very large studies released their findings in 2018, and they corroborated one another. One is from Italy, one's from America. The United States National Toxicology Program, $25 million. They performed a cell phone study. Well, in Italy, there was the largest animal study of cell tower exposure. They both found heart and brain cancer. And this was in a study of rats, which is how one of the very common ways we study cancer in humans. And that's a corroboration of cancer.
We're not saying we don't believe, we just don't have opinions.
Well,
someone smarter than us is going to have to deal with this. I don't want to cut you off, but
well, my suggestion would be for section 19, for as long as the precautionary principle is something that has proven successful for industries that deal with toxins and pollutants and poisons. The precautionary principle is something for the committee to consider.
Yeah, question.
Yeah.
Has any other nation instituted any controls, limits, or restrictions on deployment of radio frequency?
Yes, they
Oh,
have.
and under what
There's a
circumstances?
list, I don't know by heart. There's a list in your packet of,
Yeah, so page 15.
Thank you. Thank you. And, and I would be happy to get you more information as well. So given these facts, and also I'd like to say too, if you get a chance, we were here last Thursday and 11 people from the public spoke, including 5 of us, about their experience with radio frequency, radiation sensitivity. And there was also expert statements. And that's on video. It's the April 18th State House meeting. You can see that on YouTube. So I'll just close by saying fiber is more reliable than wireless. We know that. We have options. We are a certified state. We are exempt from the wireless acceleration plan. And so fiber is more reliable than wireless. It conveys clear signals much further distances than wireless does, and it has less environmental and aesthetic impact. It has no radiation. Cellular antennas, such as for 5G, they require a clear line of sight, which means trees are cut. Since wireless systems work on shared radio frequencies, interferences like weather can impact wireless bandwidth, but that's not so for fiber. Fiber also doesn't carry health risks. So given these facts, we have 4 requests. To replace broadband references in the bill with FTTP, fiber to the premises. To add a section that places a stay on attachment of 5G antennas to poles and towers until proven safe and reliable, including, this is important, including 4G antennas that can be upgraded to 5G via software. To amend section 19 to facilitate fiber optic only, and to amend section 19 by removing reference to One Touch Make Ready. I'd like to leave you with a question. How will Vermont respond to President Trump's admonishment? He said, quote, "The local areas are going to listen to us very, very strongly," end quote. Or the FCC's assertion that, quote, "It can't let unnecessary barriers to broadband deployment keep us from leading the global economy," end quote. Now, we would suggest, that the health of children and all Vermonters, the trees, and our property values are not unnecessary, and that we are worth more than the FCC's plastic mannequins. And that yes, healthy citizens are the greatest asset still any country can have.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you very much.
So,
Yes.
I would surmise you're making the case that given the choices between the 2 types of services that we should embrace, one is clearly your preference.
Fiber. Fiber to the premises. Yes.
And that you would caution us against section 19, which surrenders some of our independence in making decisions regarding our choice of delivery system.
Yes, yes. The way it's written now, it would bring Vermont to heel. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Welcome back, Madam Chair. We're just about to
Where's
take Jeff
Jeff
Austin.
Okay, come on up.
May I keep this?
Yeah, sure.
We'll work this through. Some of this, we're supposed to have meetings at 5 o'clock, but since all those people are still in the meeting across the hall,
This is important stuff.
we're gonna do this one. Okay. Jeff.
For the record, Jeff Austin from Consolidated Communications. I don't think my testimony will be more than 45, 50 minutes. Totally just kidding.
I hope you like talking to yourself.
I do. I think empty room. So thank you very much for the time today. I'll be brief. I am here to talk about H.531, the broadband bill for Vermont. And I think there's a lot of positive things about the broadband bill here in Vermont. Ultimately, giving communities more tools to talk to more people and more availability, to have those conversations about improving broadband, and maybe taking a little bit more control and having more flexibility, I think are all positive things. We don't have $500 million like they had in New York to expand broadband. We have to work with the tools we have. And I think, like I mentioned, I think a lot of the stuff regarding bonding is very positive. Increasing the universal service fund for Vermont does incrementally put more money into the fund. That does incrementally help more Vermonters, so I think that's a positive thing. I did want to just kind of call out just two sections of the bill to start. Sections 4 and 5 of the bill currently increases the minimums for the high cost fund here in Vermont, which is funded by the Vermont Universal Service Fund, to a minimum of 25.3. Today, I believe that minimum is 4.1, which matches the current minimum of unserved and served. And the connectivity initiative, which is also the other part of the funding for the Vermont Universal Service Fund. So it's looking to increase both of those minimum speeds to 25.3, where currently they're obviously less than that. Now, as it relates to the high cost fund, and I have a handout, and I'm not sure if you guys have this, but I wanted to talk just for 1 second and then give you a handout to take a look at, and then kind of wrap that part up, because I won't, go too much of that. But ultimately, with the high cost fund isn't like a bidding process. It's not out for all the carriers to actually get money from. The high cost fund is designated for specific designated extreme high cost areas in Vermont. And these were designated using the FCC tariff. There's a whole process that I won't get into. But Consolidated happens to be one of the Vermont eligible telecommunications carriers that receives money from the high cost fund. There's 5 other of the incumbent local exchange carriers, the Champlain Valley Waitsfield Telecoms, the Franklin Telecom, people that I know that you guys have talked to before. So as it relates to that, I just wanted to hand this out. If you don't mind maybe taking and passing them down. And it's only 1 page and it's big font. There's not a ton of stuff here. And I don't know if you need to make a little extra. And what I wanted to do here is just illustrate with the amount of money in the connectivity fund that we have today, and even as it increases, as it relates to the high cost fund, to get the connectivity fund, just to back up 1 quick step, really is to focus on those 4.1 and below residents or locations here in Vermont. The Department of Public Service estimates about 16,000 addresses in Vermont are at that 4.1 or below level. So we're really kind of laser focused on those 16,000 people. So as we were thinking about this bill and as we were thinking about the speeds, we obviously get money from the high cost fund, which then we go and do projects to build out broadband. The projects that we're talking about, we are building out 12 projects in 10 communities, 10 of those high cost funds, that will provide 335 locations with a minimum of 10.1. That's what we're building out today. 179 of those will qualify for 25.2. 25.2 is one of the speeds that we provide. Just shy of 25.3, but it's 25.2. So that's with about $1 million, just to kind of give you an idea. These are really high cost and hard to reach areas. If we were going to be doing the same projects, because this is where the people live, if we're going to be doing the same projects, because there's only certain companies who get the money out of the high cost fund. At 25.3, we would have only served 74 of them. The cost, and that's using very high bit rate DSL, it's DSL, fiber to electronics, electronics to the copper, and to your house. Even with the 10.1 speed that we provide, it's $3,171 per location. That's pretty expensive to start with. But if we were doing the same location with the same money, because these are part of the 16,000 people who qualify for 4.1 or less, that's 74 people at $14,000 a location.
So 74 homes, not people.
That's a great clarification, thank you. Everything is location specific, you're exactly correct. Now, and without getting into going through all the detail on the other two, those are pretty self-explanatory. It's the same story. It's the connectivity fund, though, a connectivity initiative, which actually is a bidding process. Department of Public Service does their RFP. All companies can respond. and then they award bids for those companies. We happen to get awarded these 2 projects, and actually we just did our final, just to kind of give you an idea. That Woodstock project was $150,000 from the Department of Public Service, and it ended up costing like $240,000, just to put that in perspective. But I just wanted to illustrate that if we're laser focused, I agree with the bonding. Consolidated is all in. We have an agreement with Chesterfield, New Hampshire to provide fiber to the prem in the entire town using similar bonds that are, that are in this bill. Great, we can do fiber to the prem, we can connect. I was in Langbrook this morning, as a matter of fact, talking to the folks down there. They're interested in fiber to the prem, but they're also interested in getting the whole town 25/2. Because now there's no doubt that 25/2, as the Senator mentioned, if you're trying to upload CAD files, if you're trying to do really high bandwidth applications on the upload side at home, that's harder to do on lower bandwidths. There's no doubt about this. But if we're looking at the 16,000 people that can't get anything today, and we're trying to get them something, this bonding with fiber to the prem, these opportunities that have come up with this bill, they won't happen overnight. It's gonna take time to build. We've got, let's say, 200 communities in Vermont that don't have fiber. I know that number's higher than 200, but just to estimate, it's gonna take a long time for everyone, if even municipalities can utilize this language, to then utilize it, apply, do RFPs, go through the process, get somebody to bid it, and then build it and provide service. It just takes a long time. So in the meantime, trying to utilize, get the most bang for our buck. We don't have a ton of money in these funds. And my suggestion would be, currently the high cost fund minimum is 4.1, make that 10.1. There's a lot of businesses, I've talked to a lot of customers, a lot of businesses, a rural customer in Sandgate, insurance company, 3 employees, they have 10.1 internet. Gave them a quote to do fiber to their house to get a 20 meg symmetrical service. But he didn't want to pay the extra money to get the fiber there. So the 10.1 is what they're working on today. So there's options out there. And just to put this in perspective about investment, because I know that's always a conversation. Since 2010, we've invested about $150 million in Vermont, the network. It's been a lot of work, a lot of money. We had 1,300 miles of fiber in 2010. We have 3,800 miles of fiber in Vermont in 2019, and we build more every day. We are doing fiber to the prem in certain areas and developments and things like that. So we are in that market. But I think it takes really for those 16,000 people, all options on the table to try to help these people as much as we can today. And I believe out of this whole bill, I only have one more comment, if you don't mind. And that is related to one of the last sections. It's sections 19 and 20. And those are regarding the pole attachments, make ready. I believe the committee's aware, there's a PUC open rulemaking that will happen related to everything related to pole attachments. There's people here who will be there at the table. There'll be a lot of people there. And I think that's a great way to figure out what's needed and to do that in a collaborative fashion with the PUC, obviously oversight since they have jurisdiction. So I think that this information or the language in sections 19 and 20 will be taken care of across the street at the PUC. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And that's all that I have.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any questions? All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for
And
your time.
last but not least is Jeremy Hanson. Thank you for sticking with us, everybody. This is the end of the session. This will be the norm.
I'm gonna see if I can try to do this in 3 minutes.
Okay.
Jeremy Hanson, Chair of CVFiber, Berlin Select Board, and Associate Professor of Computer Science at Norwich University. So I agree with Leslie, who started off the testimony here. I think we need to pass this bill this year, and I'll get to that punchline at the very end. There's not been a lot of incentive for the incumbents to build out the infrastructure that we need for 21st century applications. So I'm very encouraged to see the state of Vermont and the legislature working towards this. So using EC-Fiber as a model, I started CVFiber, and we found a lot of support among the communities that I approached about this. We currently have 17 towns. We're looking at adding Waterbury soon, once their select board puts me on the agenda. And these community solutions work. EC-Fiber works. They're building fiber in really rural towns, very sparse places, and those towns get speeds literally 100 times faster than what I get about 5 miles down the road to the south where I live. And they also get amazing customer service, which if you look at their Facebook page, it's a big love fest, which is very encouraging. But their employees are all here in Vermont, and all their service technicians are here in Vermont. H.531 does some really good things. So the staff position at DPS folks are very helpful, but having a dedicated staff person would certainly have helped get us going more quickly, rather than having to rely on EC-Fiber to answer all the questions. I was on the phone with them all the time at the beginning, and I talked to them maybe once every 2 weeks. I like that it sets the minimum standards to 25.3. That was something I advocated for over in the House. It's far below the 100 that was envisioned everybody getting by 2024. And I would strongly urge the committee to increase the standard to 100. We shouldn't be investing state funds in yesterday's technology. Modern home businesses aren't well served by 25.3 or 25.2, as was previously mentioned. The feasibility studies for electric utilities who want to provide broadband, we've been in extensive conversations with Washington Electric Co-op. They are excited, but they are hamstrung by their inability to use their electric funds. Even though they're a large, financially solid organization, they want to help, they want to do this, they want to provide this to their members, and they want to partner with us. So giving them the opportunity to go and see, is this possible, is this a good idea, what does this look like, would be a great way for us to work with them and have a much more promising business model than if we went it completely alone. There's also a little bit in there where it allows utilities to fund non-electric activities through USDA grant money, through RUS, and WEC is definitely interested in.
And we found out we also have a law that says they can't access it, so I think we'll fix that.
Details, right? I like that it provides the additional money for getting to those end-of-the-road Vermonters, the connectivity initiative. This is a great and noble goal, but again, we shouldn't be putting money into 20-year-old technology if we're going to be spending money. EC-Fiber also uses the connectivity initiative funds, and they build fiber to the people at the end of the road, and they give them 700 megabits per second symmetric. The planning money for communications union districts like ours, we went after Think Vermont Innovation Grant funds, and we're going after USDA Rural Development funds to fund our business model development. Having this come from the state as this designated, targeted money will definitely help a lot of other groups who are sort of in the kind of infant stages of building their communications union districts. This would help them get going much more quickly than us, where we're sort of chasing kind of nickel and dime grants here and there to try to get things done. And the amazing punchline to this, if there's nothing else that stays in this bill, the VITA funding, the loans, that bridge to the municipal bond market, revenue bonds, is so crucial for us to be able to get up and running. We would have to start very small, like Mansfield Community Fiber, and sort of plod along rather slowly until we got reasonably stable before we could go after those revenue bonds. There was one suggestion that I would make there, is that increasing the amount that each individual organization can draw upon. So it's actually a little bit more than $2 million to get a stable subscriber base to bridge those few years. Stan Williams at ValleyNet is coming tomorrow, and I expect he's going to be talking about that more. He's more on the financial side of things. He'll be smarter about that. So I implore you to make sure that this bill passes this year. In part because CVFiber, we have an exciting opportunity with ValleyNet. We're hoping to use the VITA loans in partnership with ValleyNet to start construction next year in some of our southernmost towns in Washington County. And we would use those towns then as a foothold and those revenues to get us towards municipal bonds in a couple of years, and then build up the rest of the towns in our member communities.
Okay.
Did you hear the comment about swapping the money for feasibility studies for more direct grants? looks like 700,000 for feasibility studies.
It's what Leslie Nulty testified to.
Yeah, I'm not as convinced about that, frankly. The feasibility studies are an important step. They should not be spent frivolously, but we can't go and get a loan. We can't go to the bond market without a concrete business plan that says, you know, what do our finances look like 3 to 5 years down the road? You don't walk into a bank saying, just give me $1 million and we'll see how it goes. No, I mean, having those, you know, that $60,000 or whatever to hire somebody who's done this before. I'm a computer science professor, I'm a tech geek, I don't speak finance and I don't speak business plans. I'm gonna hire somebody to do that, because that's not my area of expertise.
When you say don't spend money on obsolete technology, are you referring to the kind of DSL that Comcast is describing?
Comcast isn't describing it, Consolidated is talking about,
Consolidated.
is DSL, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That and other,
That it makes no sense to spend money on that, even though it may give the minimum amount of bandwidth right now.
and the minimum amount of bandwidth is wholly insufficient for any modern application.
Thank you. That was clear.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee, that's it for today. I'm gonna let you go. But fair warning, I was just asked if we're meeting on Monday. I said not this Monday. I have appointments, I'm sure some of you have, but don't plan on having Mondays off if at all possible. It looks like morning committees will be shutting down a week from tomorrow. We'll probably start meeting like at 10 in the morning so that morning committees can do committees, a conference, and do that. But we will be working even harder.
Thanks, Ann.
So, yeah, it's almost time.